So hello and welcome to the video. Welcome to a very chilly New York. No clouds, so the temperature is plunged, but at least it means you get a nice clear view of a sunset over Manhattan behind me. Not sure if you'll be able to see it, but trust me, it's there. I'm at JFK Airport. I'm about to get on my third flight of the day, so they are blurring into one a little, but today I'll be flying on Delta One across to Las Vegas. As I said, I've not done a great deal of research as to what to expect on this flight, so if you'd like to find out with me how it goes, stick around.
Hi, I'm Matt. Over the last 25 years, I've travelled a lot. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.3 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So subscribe to the channel so you can come with me. There have been a few reviews of Delta One published in recent months, and let's say they haven't been uniformly positive. Delta is the largest airline in the world, and being the largest doesn't often mean you have the best product, in the service industry at least. But I had an open mind and was looking forward to the experience. This flight was a continuation of my booking with Virgin Atlantic from Dublin to Vegas, so I'd received a boarding pass for this domestic leg in London. So I didn't need to check in, but I wanted to take a look at the facilities anyway. Not exactly the first wing at Heathrow's Terminal 5, but a nice enough space that is well separated from the hubbub of the rest of the terminal. Immediately behind the check-in area was the security lane, a wee bit confusing to know which chute to go down. The nearest are for those with TSA pre-clearance, but the priority lane was accessible down the side. Speedily through security, which is always a nice thing to say. This was Terminal 4 at JFK Airport, and it was quite a pleasant environment. Delta One is the branding given to a handful of longer domestic flights that feature lie-flat seats and other premium features which differentiate the experience from the standard first-class domestic service. One of those differentiators is lounge access. Understanding the rules for accessing lounges when flying domestically in the USA is a bit of a black art. The lounge access page on the Delta website runs to nearly 2,000 words. The bottom line is that flying first class on a domestic route with Delta won't get you in, even if you have top tier status in a SkyTeam Airlines scheme. You need to be connecting to an international flight for your status to be worth anything. You will get access to US lounges if you have top tier status with a One World or Star Alliance airline and you're on that alliance's American carrier. This makes SkyTeam the outlier amongst the 3 global alliances, and it's a pretty tough policy that probably irritates a lot of international travellers. To get into a Delta lounge, you need either to buy a membership to the lounge program, to hold certain credit cards, or be on a flight that does qualify for access, which includes their flights branded as Delta One. Had I connected from Virgin's upper class onto a domestic route that wasn't a Delta One flight, I would not have got in. If that wasn't much fun to listen to, imagine having to research and script it. It was quite a hike to the lounge. You don't expect JFK's terminals to be quite that large, but eventually I got to the Sky Club, as their lounge is known, and they let me in. It was quite a large space and was fairly busy, suggesting that plenty of people had worked out how to get in. It was a Friday night, so it's probably not a shock for it to have been busy. A decent buffet was on offer, and a bar. Some basic drinks were free, with most things requiring payment via cash or Delta's Air Miles, another way in which US lounges may surprise and annoy travellers from other parts of the world. I had no cash on me, and certainly no US singles with which I could have tipped the server for the free beer I procured, and I have to say they were really quite sniffy about not getting a tip, despite me apologising in my best English traveller's voice. Sorry, old boy. Hey-ho. The staff who were circulating to clear the empties did offer to get me a refill, which was nice, although to be honest it had tasted like a free beer, so I declined. The second lounge of the day with an outside observation deck, although as it was well below freezing, it was not available. After about an hour it was time to head to the gate, another fairly decent walk. Boarding had already started, so I was able to walk straight on. Our chariot that night was to be an Airbus A330-200, one about to celebrate its 18th birthday, that started out with Northwest Airlines but was absorbed into Delta in 2008. I turned left into the premium cabin, which had been installed in 2013 and so presumably represented the very best that the world's largest airline could possibly offer the long-haul market 9 years ago. First impressions were pretty good. The seats looked to have decent privacy and were configured in the reverse herringbone formation that tends to be the format followed by the most successful business class products. This was a world away from the over-padded armchair style of recliner seat you often see in US Airlines first class cabins. So the seat. In front of you are the seat controls, a TV screen and a release button, as well as a controller. It all looks a bit dated. This seat was installed 9 years ago, but I suspect the design may be quite a lot older. Your feet go into a cubby, more on that later, and there's a document pocket down by your ankles. Behind you is a reading light which doubles up as a headphone holder, along with power and headphone sockets and a USB port, which is conveniently located for those wanting to film out of the window. It looks like the water is in a recess, but no, it's just a small bottle of water. By all objective measures, it's a decent seat. Dated, with minimal storage, but decent. Several of the trip reports I mentioned talked about the cleanliness of the seat, and Delta does make a lot of noise about hygiene in its safety presentation. I looked pretty thoroughly and couldn't see anything that alarmed me. The seat had some pretty heavy scuffs and scrapes, and part of the wall insulation seems to be escaping, but I'd have to say it was pretty clean. And then we took off. A beautifully clear night, so we got great views of the airport. After heading north, we turned to the west, and I got a remarkable and prolonged view of New York and of Manhattan. The view of the alternating head and tail lights on Manhattan's avenues was quite remarkable. Why anyone would pick an aisle seat and miss out on this kind of experience is completely beyond me. To the service. Delta's website needs 2,000 words to explain the lounge entry rules, and it takes all that and more spread across several pages to explain the Delta One offering. The problem though is that as there's a domestic Delta One, an international Delta One, a Delta One Suites offering, and the service varies depending on the length of the flight, it's very difficult to unpick what the service offering should be on the flight you might be on. It's unclear whether this is deliberate or is just the result of having the website designed by a committee, but even after studying things for some time after the flight, I struggled to be definitive about whether what happened was right or not. My experience is that travellers on this sort of US domestic flight, particularly in premium cabins, are often frequent travellers, so don't need much support from the attendants. So service throughout was speedy and efficient, perhaps even a little brusque, rather than leisurely and personalised. That was a little disappointing, as I'd hoped for a more engaged experience. Before we'd even taken off, the attendant had apologised for the bedding not having been loaded, and I do think that is something I should have experienced on this flight. No amenity kit either, but I really can't work out from the Delta website whether there should have been one. Quite quickly after takeoff, there was a drinks round. No real complaints here, although Delta is still saving money by using plastic cups. Then the meal service. I was verbally offered pastrami or vegetarian as my meal option. No menus were available and no further explanation was offered. As I said, a bit brusque. I know what pastrami is, so drew some conclusions, although I'm not sure many Europeans would know. As I anticipated, pastrami turned out to be a sandwich, which was disappointing as I'd been expecting something resembling a proper dinner. But this was my third flight of the day, and it turned out that this was exactly what my body was craving, given it was about 2 in the morning in Dublin where I'd started the day. Really quite nice, although not, I think, what I should have expected. Then the lights went off, and we didn't really see the attendants again. I'm certain they would have been happy to serve more drinks or snacks, but most passengers just got their coats down from the overhead bins and used them as blankets, given there were none loaded. so I decided to try out the flatbed too. Even though the foot cubby is very restricting and the seat is quite lumpy without a mattress topper, I did still nod off for a couple of hours but could only sleep on my side, as the cubby could not accommodate size 12 feet that were over 6 feet away from the top of my head. After a quick visit to a rather uninspiring loo, which, to be extremely critical, was perhaps a little worse for wear after around 5 hours of flying, it was time to land. We came into the Vegas basin from the northeast and vectored straight into the airport, which is about the only flight path you can be allocated that gives no views of the lights of the Strip. But after 26 hours of travelling, I was very pleased to have arrived. Unfortunately, we then had to wait on the apron for 20 minutes for our gates to open up, which was obviously a little annoying. So, Delta One. I quite enjoyed the flight, but I can see where the criticisms of other reviewers come from. Looking at the hard product, the reverse herringbone configuration might incline you to compare Delta One to international products like perhaps Qatar or BA's new Suite product. If you do, then Delta One isn't very good. It's dated and frankly it's a bit clapped out. But if you compare it to most other US airlines' domestic first products, it's great. A lie flat bed on a domestic route is still quite unusual for the US, which is a pretty serious indictment of the US domestic market, but that's a topic for another video. The soft product was disappointing though, and I think in several regards it was not the experience I'd paid for. It was perhaps disappointing that the other frequent travellers in the cabin seemed to not be bothered by the shortcomings, perhaps another indictment of US domestic travel, in that they're so beaten down by disappointing experiences that they don't really register anymore. As regards paying for the flight, this was part of a Dublin to Vegas itinerary bought through Virgin Atlantic. If you allocate the £1,494 I paid in total to the flights based on distance flown, this sector cost me £299. If you tried to buy a flight today for April, you'd find the occasional flight for less than £600, but most will cost a lot more. If you buy 6 months ahead of time, you'll see change from £400 on most dates. So my fare was pretty cheap and was probably a fair price for the experience received. I wouldn't want to pay that much more though, particularly if the soft product remains compromised. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment, please like this video, and as always subscribe if you're new. So I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.